Hello and welcome to Your Story, Your Tune. I'm here with a story sent in by one of you, a real moment from a real life, and the song that became the soundtrack to it all. Tonight, we're stepping into a story about searching, about the questions we carry from childhood, and what happens when we finally knock on doors we've always wondered about. It's about rejection, persistence, and the complicated truth of where we come from. Tonight's story comes from Fiona in Blackpool, who wrote to us about finding the people who made her, and learning that some answers hurt more than silence ever did. This is Fiona's story. Fiona's always been the quiet sort. 42 years old, a senior librarian at Blackpool Central, living in a tidy terraced house near Stanley Park. She's the person who remembers your name, who orders the large print editions without being asked, who knows which regulars prefer crime fiction over romance. Adopted at 6 months old by a couple in Poulton-le-Fylde, she'd had a good childhood. Loved, stable, never wanting for anything. But there was always a question mark, a gap in the story. In 2023, after her adoptive mum passed away, Fiona decided it was time. She traced her birth mother through social services, a woman named Karen, living in a council flat in Fleetwood. The address came through on a Tuesday. By Friday, Fiona was standing on the doorstep, heart hammering, practicing what to say. Karen answered in a dressing gown, face gaunt, eyes wary. Fiona introduced herself, stumbling over the words, trying to sound calm. For a moment, Karen just stared. Then she said it, flat and factual. She'd given Fiona up because she'd relapsed on heroin. Couldn't cope. Didn't want to. And before Fiona could respond, before she could even process it, Karen said she didn't want contact. She wasn't that person anymore. She shut the door. Fiona stood there on the communal walkway, seagulls screaming overhead, feeling like she'd been erased twice. She drove home in silence. That night, she cried until her ribs ached. But something shifted. If Karen wouldn't give her answers, maybe her father would. By early 2026, Fiona had done a DNA test. It took months, but eventually a match came through. A second cousin who led her to Morecambe. A retired mechanic, 70 years old, living in Morecambe. Fiona sent a careful message through the DNA site. No reply. She tried Facebook. Nothing. Finally, she found a phone number through an old business listing. When she rang, a man answered, gruff, suspicious. She explained who she was. There was a long pause. Then Morecambe said he didn't know what she was talking about. Fiona pressed gently, mentioned Karen's name, the year she was born. Morecambe's tone shifted. He said he'd need to think about it. He hung up. A week later, he rang back. His voice was tired. He admitted he'd known Karen briefly in the early 80s. A fling, nothing serious. He'd been married. His wife had never known. When Karen told him she was pregnant, he'd given her money and walked away. He said it like he was confessing to a parking fine. Fiona felt something cold settle in her chest. She asked if they could meet. He hesitated, then agreed. They arranged a café in Morecambe, neutral ground. When Fiona arrived, Morecambe was already there, nursing a mug of tea, looking older than his photo. They sat across from each other like strangers on a delayed train. Malcolm was polite, distant. He answered her questions, his job, his late wife, his 2 other children who didn't know Fiona existed. He said he wasn't proud of what he'd done, but it was a long time ago. Fiona asked if he'd ever thought about her. He looked at his tea and said, "Honestly, no, not really." Fiona left that cafe feeling hollowed out. She'd spent 3 years searching, hoping for something, connection, acknowledgement, maybe even an apology. Instead, she got a shrug and a cup of lukewarm regret. Malcolm texted a few days later, saying it was best they didn't complicate things. His kids were settled. His late wife's memory deserved peace. Fiona stared at the message on her phone, standing in the staff room at the library, kettle boiling in the background. She thought about Karen's slammed door, about Malcolm's polite dismissal, about the careful life she'd built, brick by brick, without them. And she realised something. She didn't need their permission to exist. She didn't need their explanations to be whole. The rejection still hurt. God, it hurt. But it didn't define her. She'd spent so long thinking that finding them would fill the gap. But the gap wasn't in her. It was in them. That weekend, Fiona sat in her back garden with a cup of tea and her old iPod. She scrolled through her music, looking for something that fit. And there it was, a song she'd loved years ago, one she'd almost forgotten. She pressed play. The opening chords filled the quiet, and Fiona closed her eyes. It was a song about resilience, about standing tall when the world tries to knock you down, about finding strength not in where you came from, but in who you choose to be. And for the first time in years, Fiona felt like herself. Not the rejected daughter, not the abandoned baby, just Fiona. Enough. Some stories don't end with reunion or reconciliation. Some end with the quiet, powerful realization that you're already complete. And the song that means everything to Fiona? It's Raw by Katy Perry. A song about reclaiming your voice, about refusing to be silenced by the people who didn't choose you. Due to copyright, we can't play it in the video, but I will leave a card and a link in the description for you to enjoy Fiona's song. If you have a story you'd like to share, we'd love to hear it. Until next time, this has been your story, your tune.